guess that means we're on the air. Good evening. This is the Paxton Fire Finance Committee, whatever. March 1st, 2023, starting the meeting at 7 o'clock. We'll start on number 3 on the agenda to discuss the fire and the EMS budget 1220 with Chief Pingatore. Welcome to the podium.
Thank you, and thank you for having me tonight. It was a nice little break. I was expecting it last week, but with vacation it worked out well. So tonight, welcome everybody. I know a couple new faces here on the committee. So I just kind of want to start by going over the Paxton Fire Department and what we do. And then at the end of this, well, halfway through the slideshow, we're going to get right into the budget and the numbers, and hopefully explain a little bit of the packet that's in front of you. Just their aids. Take them home, look at them, do what you got to do. At the end, and feel free at any point in time, stop me, ask a question. I also have a spot at the end for questions. We can discuss anything you might have on your mind. So without further ado, let me introduce you guys to the Paxton Fire Department. So tonight in this presentation, we're going to go to the Paxton Fire Department. We're going to tell you what we are, what we do, how we serve you and the taxpayers of Paxton. We're going to go over our data for the full fiscal year FY22 and up to this point in FY23, our EMS data and our revenue and our proposed FY24 budget. As you can see, hold on, I'm going too fast. We're an all hazards department, meaning we do fire, EMS, emergency management. We pride ourselves in this with a main mission of preserving life, stabilizing incidents, and conserving property, and we respond to all man-made, natural, and accidental incidents within the town of Paxton. This is our organizational chart for FY23. This is how the department's composed. You can see top down, myself, our administrative coordinator who assists us, our deputy chief, 2 captains, and reporting to both captains are 2 company lieutenants apiece, so for 4 lieutenants. And then we have a total breakdown of the department itself. Everybody in the shade of blue is a firefighter / EMS provider. Everybody in the gray is just a firefighter, with a lot of them in EMT school as we speak. And that's something we're going to cover tonight as well. In the green is our CERT team, our community emergency response team. They're all volunteers. That's something new within the last couple of years. We're building that out right now. They assist us at large incidents. They support us in the town throughout various incidents, large and small in some cases. And they assist us with all sorts of emergency management duties around here. The orange, those are new recruits right now that are attending the Fire Academy, coming online. So our total manpower per our charter is 40 firefighters, paid call firefighters and full-time. This year alone, the recruiting's been great, the last 2 years, I should say, and we are at 37 right now. We're almost to full capacity, which is huge. We are what's called a combination department. We employ both full-time career firefighters and call firefighters to protect the town of Paxton. Career and call personnel are trained to the same level, firefighter 1, 2. The only difference between them is the level of care when it comes to EMS. Sometimes they're equipped and trained to work together at any incident to which we respond. So this is a fan favorite, if you've seen this presentation the last 2 years. This is what's required in a room and contents structure fire. As you can see, if we're venting, doing venting operations, 17 personnel if an aerial device is needed. On average, about 15 personnel are needed during the day. So 40 firefighters is kind of a lot, but during the day, and I'll go over the staffing, we can still face a bit of a challenge, and this is why in the fire service we rely heavily upon mutual aid from neighboring towns. And the combination department really, it's needed to support all these expanding incidents. All right, call firefighters. So they all respond to a variety of incidents. And like I just touched on, it is a great balance for the town of Paxton. We guaranteed daily minimum staffing with the career people. Call people expand upon that when we get fire and EMS calls, when we need help. And, you know, they're only paid as they're needed. And then with mandatory trainings as well. So you can see this, this post, I kind of highlighted it. So on a typical Friday, we're staffed with 3 full-time members. Okay? In this particular Friday, on December 9th, we got a call for missing hikers in the woods. We were able to put 12 people in those woods quickly and find these 2 hikers, and without a combination department, we wouldn't be able to do that. Our department operations, and this is kind of just a down and dirty breakdown of how we run here. As far as EMS is concerned, the on-duty career staff respond to EMS calls daily. In the event of a high priority call, cardiac arrest, or a second call during peak hours, additional either in-house personnel, depending on how we're staffed, are available to respond, or on call. Okay, and those can come in off-peak hours as well. And dispatch will tone for any available personnel if we need it. Fire calls, and it's all one big happy family here. The duty crew responds in fire apparatus. Call people come back, they backfill those seats. Behind them or in the next apparatus to respond to these calls and keep our manpower up. People power, we'll put it that way. It's 2023, right? An additional personnel are dispatched based on the dispatch run card. First arriving personnel will assess and will determine the needs. We don't need to see that animation. This is the dispatch run card. So this is how we kind of run daily. Anything in the gray, that's an on-duty call. So that's what the on-duty crews are getting paid to do, is respond to those calls. Anything in the orange, that's a full department call, or what we call an all call. So those tend to be more manpower specific or necessary. So you can see medical, second medicals, lift assist, checking the welfare, assist PD or other government agencies, request for an ALS intercept, service calls, EMS station coverage. Sometimes you do get requested to other towns to cover them, and then we have to backfill here. Outside odor, smoke, gas, as long as it's outside, we send the on-duty crew. If someone calls for it in their house, it becomes a full department recall, because at that point, we're starting to think structure fire. Illegal burn, mulch fire, water problem. Everything else in the orange there, I don't know if the audience can really see, but elevator problems, missing or lost people, suspicious packages, substances, fluid spill, hazmat, bomb threats, medical helicopter standby, carbon monoxide, motor vehicle crashes, unknown injuries, motor vehicle crashes, known injuries, vehicle fire, residential smoke detector, activation, no smoke or visible fire. That can kind of go either way, and it does, depending on the information from the caller. Residential smoke detector, no smoke or visible fire, malfunction. Again, that goes either way, depending on the information we get from the caller. Mutual aid for structure fire, smoke in a structure, odor of gas in a structure, brush fire, out of control burn, structure fire, automatic alarm, central station water flow, and water and ice rescues. And depending on how the call comes in, any myriad in between that, because sometimes the caller's not describing the best incident that's going on. So getting into the data. So, you know, when I do this presentation in February, we're about partway through a fiscal year, so I kind of want to bring you guys up to speed when I see you again the next year as to how we finished fiscal year previously. So there's FY22 incident data. You can see on the left, it's by day of the week as to how we respond to these calls, when the calls come in. Sundays being a relatively slower day, with 191 calls for the year, and peaking out Wednesdays or midweek, Wednesdays and Thursdays. Same with the time of call. It kind of follows the same curve. Overnights and early mornings tend to be a little slower. Everybody's tucked in their bed. Everything's working, hopefully as promised, as far as, your smoke detectors and everything in your home. And then during the day, EMS and fire calls tend to shoot up, starting around 8 to 9 p.m. FY22 and FY21 were unique years for calls. And what we do with that data is this is how we staff during the day. So the legend at the bottom, starting left going to right, that's one firefighter EMT and one paramedic 24/7. They work a rotating shift, and you can see by the background colors on each slot. So group 1 is in red. Those 2 people work Sunday, they'll work Wednesday, they'll drop down 2 days every week. They'll drop a day every week, I'm sorry. And then on Mondays, well, I'm around every day, but I'm in my office Monday. So the little guy shaded with the white background, that's me. He's a little thinner, but that's okay.
Same color shirt, though.
That's right. It's a little gray. It's kind of I'm in Monday through Friday. The guy shaded in red, that is our full-time fire inspector. He works 12-hour days, Monday through Thursday. He's also a firefighter EMT. And the little guy shaded in the yellow, he is also our firefighter EMT mechanic. So you can see he works Tuesdays at 24, Thursdays at 12, and Friday at 12. This is to give us the appropriate coverage at the appropriate times. And we take our data and we staff them there. And this is why we staff them. So you can see our average run times, especially for EMS. Average en route from when we get the call, from when you call 911 to the time we go, is 5.56 minutes. That was FY22. Little slower this year. Don't know why, it's about 3 seconds slower, but 5.61 minutes. So when you call, we're at your door. That's why we do what we do. At the bottom here, this is one key thing I wanted to key in on. This is when we have to call mutual aid on EMS, okay? So if for some reason our trucks are out on calls already, and we have to call a mutual aid unit, it takes about 17 minutes for the closest unit to get here. That's the average time. We do have some outliers, about 26 minutes, depending on where they're coming from. So as you can see, again, this is FY23. The Sundays are a bit busier right now, but as we level off the next 4 months, I'm assuming it's going to be right around the same. Paxton doesn't change a whole heck of a lot. But our data-driven staffing, that's where we want to hit those days. That's why we do what we do. Doesn't mean calls don't come in on Saturdays and Sundays or off hours. They do. But we concentrate our manpower on those busier days. Our FY23 incident data to date, okay, is broken down. So you can see, I lied, it's not to date, it's to 2/18. So it was, I prepared this a week before last. So right now, so far, 990 calls. All right, obviously the biggest slice of that pie is EMS. Moving clockwise, well, let me move clockwise. So at the top are structure fires. It's 2% of those 990, that's 15. Brush fires are our next slice of pie in the darker red. Those are 11. EMS-related incidents thus far, 634. Motor vehicle accidents, 31. That's that little purple slice. Hazmat calls, 10, and that's the little orange one. That one grows every year. Public assist inspections, false alarms, good intents. Those are 192 thus far. And that, you'll see, I pulled this data early because we'll talk about the inspections in a sec. I'm sorry, the good intent, false alarms, good intent were 91. And then the water problems this year have been tricky with the freezing and the basements flooding and everything else. It's been a wet winter and a cold winter in some days. Those we've done 6 so far. So getting into this fire prevention. So I did talk a little bit about the fire inspector. He was new in the position was new in FY23. And this is what we do. So fire prevention's FY23 to date, 204. Again, this was done the week before last. We've got a couple more in since then. Our annual life safety inspections are 17, so that's our walkthroughs of our schools, the college, churches, assembly group structures. Fire drills thus far at the school, 2 in the fall. We'll go back and do probably 2 to 3 more as the weather breaks a little better. Smoke CO inspections, 57. We do those on transfer of homes and sales. LP gas tanks, 32. A lot of people converting from oil to LP gas. Oil burners, 13. That's when you replace an oil burner, we gotta come by and inspect it. Oil tanks, 26. This has been up this year. A lot of oil tanks are rupturing, so therefore, they're hitting that peak age and rotting out and leaking. So we've had a lot of those at 26 installs, 26 removals. Should kind of equal out. Fire alarms, 1, so that's a big commercial system. Follow-up on complaints, follow-ups or complaints with 17. The last 3 years have been interesting with complaints. We get a lot as people work from home and they see things during the day, I think. Above-ground fuel tanks, 5, and that's about an annual average because not too many people do fueling in town here. Plan reviews, 4, so that's probably 4 new homes going online, and annual liquor licenses. Excuse me. So anybody that has a license to serve alcohol, not to sell, but to serve, has to get an annual inspection. Oh, I'm sorry, let me go back. And you can see we're 204, we're ahead by 24, same time last period. We're probably up a little more. And we closed last year at 250 inspections, FY21 with 322. FY21 was an interesting year because everybody's home with COVID, doing work around their house, a lot of renovations. Our public education, this also falls under a full-time inspector, but we also have someone that goes out and does this separately. So far conducted 2 open houses of the fire station, 7 CPR classes, 10 station tours for groups, education groups, 6 daycare visits, and 13 school visits. So it's a big part of what we do. It's required by law. Any questions thus far on that end of things before I jump into EMS data and revenue? This is always the fun part. All right. So here's our EMS transport call volume. FY22 versus FY23. You can see FY22 is in the red, FY23 in the blue. It is down slightly this year, and that's because the last 2 years were abnormally high. Following COVID and everything else, we had a small collapse in the private EMS industry. So the city of Worcester depends heavily on private EMS to do backup calls for their system, which is operated out of UMass Memorial. We all had staffing difficulties over those times because who wants to become an EMT or paramedic during a pandemic? There's very few. And people were leaving the jobs. So we were getting sucked down into Worcester a lot on mutual aid for the last 2 years. So that drove our call volume abnormally high to the point where I'll tell you that January of 2022, we were kind of at a critical tipping point as to what we could actually provide. Luckily, we provided all our calls, met all our goals, and gave away very minimal mutual aid calls in the town of Paxton. The unfortunate part about that and what happens when we border a town of city of 200,000 people, state of Massachusetts requires us to go mutual aid with the ambulance. If we have a primary staffed ambulance and then we get requested, we have to, under CMR 105, section 170, provide that ambulance mutual aid. So it was driving these calls up like crazy. If we're on our own calls, we can't provide it, but that primary truck was going to the city quite a bit. In turn, though, we saw a decent year of revenue. So going forward, if you can understand this chart, I tried to kind of experiment a little bit, so bear with me. So our expected current position, right now, we're at 63%, FY23. You can see we're in-town responses, your 911, your walk-ins to the station or flag downs, people coming up to the bays to, with an issue, are high. Higher than than should be expected. Our mutual aid, our out-of-town work is actually dropped, which is, good for the town of Paxton in some senses. So, and then on the other side, the left side, the darker blue, you can see that's FY22, that's where we finished off. We were high on the mutual aid stuff between providing mutual aid ambulances and intercepts, and that's meeting up with a lower level of care ambulance to provide them with our paramedic. Our revenue thus far, so dollars and cents, the gold is this year, we're at 263,916, 916 for FY23, that's July 1st to current. Our total revenue, same time last year, was 284,000. You can see, going to the end of the year, we have a big spike in June. That's because we get, we apply every year for what's called CPE program, and that's a reimbursement program from Mass Health. So last year, we got an influx of 28,000. What that does is because we take such a big reduction from Mass Health patients, it kind of puts money back in. The state gives it back to us for our operations.
Chief, if you don't mind, real quick question. So how does the revenue work on your EMS calls? Just, I have
question.
no idea. So
All right.
I'm looking at the stacks and I get it.
Yeah.
I just want to know how that works.
So, here we are. You're perfect timing, Jeremy. So when we do a call, we bill insurance, your health insurance, okay? So what happens is if you have private health insurance, Harvard Pilgrim, Blue Cross, depending on what your coverage says, we bill a rate, right? I don't have the rates in front of me right at the moment, but it's anywhere, I think it's anywhere, our highest rate is like $2,500, and we get $50 a mile. Your health insurance, if you have a good plan, covers 100% of that, you never see it. Some plans right now, because of what are called higher deductible plans, you may see a bill. You may see some of that difference of that bill in that private health insurer. But when we take anybody that's on a government plan, such as Medicare or Mass Health, in order for us to bill Medicare, we have to sign into a contract with Medicare, which is kind of weird, but that's just the way Medicare works. By going into that contract, in order just to bill them, we have to accept adjustments from them. So they set a rate every year. And as you can see, if I billed $1,950 for a run, Medicare automatically adjusts it down $1,412. Medicare will pay $428 for that run. If they have a secondary insurer, they'll kick in $109. And by federal law, I cannot balance bill that to recover that adjustment of $1,412. Private insurer, I can. Medicare, Mass Health, I can't. So you can see the same thing on Mass Health. You got to deal with an adjustment. And that's where that CPE program comes in. They give us a fraction of that money back. We have to go through a pretty extensive program with our billing company, all our operational needs, submit our budgets for the year, and they give us back. Right now, we are projected to get back $62,000 in June. So, yeah.
Chief, on the slide before this, is that why in August your revenue was so high?
June, yes, it's June, but yes, that's why, that's when it gets paid out. So August of this current year, no, that was just making up. So, and that's the other thing when it comes to billing. When we bill for the run, we bill a couple of days after we do the run, right? Goes to our billing company kicks it out, bills the health insurance. It can take anywhere, some are pretty quick turnaround, about 30 days, but it can take anywhere from 30 to 180 days. Automotive accidents automobile accidents. Some of those take up to like 5 to 7 years sometimes for us to recover that money, depending on if it went to suit, who's collecting what at what time. And so the billing's kind of a tricky thing, and that's why we have a third-party company do it. And if we don't collect money, like, it becomes a write-off. So if I keep jacking up my rates, or the town's rates every year to cover certain things, what happens is you saw the adjustment just gets bigger, and it just makes it that much harder.
So Mike, can we go
Yep.
forward to the slide that showed the so on this one right here, Medicare,
Yeah.
what would you book initially?
So,
The 1950, the 1412, or
good question.
what you're gonna receive?
Here's what we get. So going to this slide, and this is going to answer your question. So you can see the columns, and I don't know if everybody in the back of the room can see this. There are 7 columns, one's the difference. The first column on the left is billing. That's what we bill. So that's what we bill total in a month. Each row. The next are credits. That's what we collect, what we collected that month. Now, it doesn't, if I billed 95,000 that month, right? I got 29,000 in credits, but it's not from that 95,000 I billed that month. It's everything coming in cumulatively over the course of several months. Then, the third column you can see is our adjustments. So I billed 95,000, or I don't want to say we billed 95,000 in July. We got $30,000 back in bills that were out already. The bills that we sent out in July were adjusted down $58,000. And then going over month-end balances, a cumulative of what's billed out and collected, it should zero out at the end for a difference. As far as, as we go down, and that's FY, all the way to the right's FY23, all the way to the left's FY22, so you can see, we've billed out so far this year $757,000. Adjustments have been $425,000, depending on who we take and what we take. So if you're, take a lot of, and we do, a lot of Medicare, mass health patients, we're getting a lot less than if we take private health insurers. Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yeah, for now, yeah.
For now, and we
Yeah.
can,
Yep.
I got other data. And if we don't collect, because what happens a lot of times, we bill, if it's out-of-state insurer, or you got a high deductible plan, we send that out, it goes out 6 months. Our billing company works 6 months, gets kicked to a collection agency from there for another 6 months. At that point, if we don't collect because it's medical debt, it ends up usually going to a write-off.
How much do you write off in an average year?
We haven't written anything off yet.
Okay.
Yep. That is something that we're gonna have to start doing. But we haven't, the policy of the last administration here was not to. And that's something I'm trying to get moving on, because this is our 10th year with the ambulance, so we got years of debt that we have to go through. All right. So getting to the FY24 budget, and I sent a packet out. Rich, I sent you this. I sent 3 versions. Years past, I've done a separate fire and EMS budget, and that's what I did again this year, but I also did a combined budget with both budgets in under one account, under the 1220. This has been a goal of mine for a few years to get this going to this point. One of the big things is we have 2 budgets for one department, and we do the same job. So it makes it a little tricky for me during the year as to what's going where and what's happening. So this year, the total budget for both is $1,278,015. Adding in $350,000 in EMS revenue, which is a 12% increase over last year that we added, brings our budget down to about $928,000. And that's $34,000 over last year's, which was $893 for a combined budget. Now, remember, the last 2 years, we've submitted two, one for fire operations, one for EMS operations. In this sheet, this budget sheet, you'll see I highlighted everything yellow that was on EMS. And I'm gonna go over all this right now. So, combining the budgets from 1220 and 1232, the services remain level. There is a 3.8% increase, and this is after adding $350,000 in EMS revenue to it. And this increase is entirely related to compensation. We added in the 2.5% COLA for call members. And then our collective bargaining obligations, and that's the big one, that's the 773. So let me go back. So if you're looking at that budget line, it's 773. Last year, when we submitted both budgets, and if you go to the back 2 pages of that packet, you'll see there are 2 separate budgets in there. And this is what it would look like if I submitted it separate. You have the fire inspector on the fire budget, and he's under the collective bargaining agreement. And then we go to EMS, and everybody on the EMS side is under the collective bargaining agreement for 713. So combining that, we're looking at $773,000. For all the contracted employees. So putting that on one budget's huge. The benefits of combining this budget. One, really, the big one is improved transparency. All employees, we do the same job. We're just not the same level of care. So, and that's highlighted in their hourly pay and their difference in compensation between EMTs and paramedics. Personnel are required to answer both fire and EMS calls at any time when available and on duty. Attempting to split pay from each budget is confusing, it's subjective, and it's ripe for error. So for example, many times we have fire calls that require a second ambulance or firefighter EMS personnel to transport. So a lot of motor vehicle accidents may require, if it's a high priority patient, we're gonna pull a firefighter off the engine. Well, he came back for a fire call, not necessarily EMS call, but now he's on the ambulance. The other thing is our fire inspector, he covers vacations, sick days, and second ambulance calls during the week. So his pay is actually split between both budgets. $59,000 on the fire side, and another $20,000 came out of the EMS side to do that. So that becomes confusing, because if fire is getting a 2.5% or whatever the COLA on other years, but the collective bargained people are getting a 3% or whatever's in their contract, we got to kind of pull those numbers apart. And years ago, we did that with a mechanic in this department, and it got very, very confusing. And then when full-time members come back for fire calls, because they are just as much a part of the call department as the call firefighters, their overtime ends up coming out of the call side, because they are now call firefighters coming back. So if they come back and they work 3 hours, that comes out of fire as well. So then when they put in a time card, and they have a line item for fire and they have a line for EMS as to how we pay them. So it gets a little wacky, and it's been going on for years, and now I believe is the opportunity to seize upon this and combine both budgets. One of the big things that I'm hoping to see out of this is enhanced efficiency in other line items. So fire apparatus, they're stocked with medical supplies. And, we go to a structure fire and a burn victim comes out, those guys in that truck, they're probably treating that burn victim. Well, if I need gloves in those trucks, Am I buying that out of EMS? Am I buying it out of fire? And we're split billing, so I'm adding that stuff to the fire budget, when really, you know what, I probably can cover this thing out of EMS. Our purchase services line item, it includes maintenance of equipment and vehicles. It can be condensed, and in some cases, this should result in a savings of funds with conservative budgeting. So I have a line item to maintain the ambulances. Well, the ambulances are registered to the fire department with blue fire department plates. They have SCBA in the ambulance, axes and Halligans. Should be coming out of one budget. Supplies and equipment line items, they should also experience the same benefit, and I kind of touched on that with the split billing on the gloves and everything. Should also reduce, if not end of the year transfers. So our 5,100 salary and compensation, these are the big ones that changed. The salary for the chief went up 4.5% under contract. 5013 compensation, the stipends for on-call, for the officers and the on-call position, so our on-call officer stipends, and for those of you who haven't heard this over the last couple of years, on Friday and Saturday nights, we pay $75 to an officer in the department to be at home, ready to respond to anything that goes on, because, well, Friday and Saturdays, those are our toughest nights for call people, right? You go out to dinner, you got things going on, you go away for the weekend, you take the kids everywhere. So we pay one person, right now, $75. He covers, or they cover a Friday, and then another person may cover a Saturday. Some of us, myself, I don't get the stipend, but I like to take both. If I'm gonna commit a weekend, I'm gonna go both. I'm gonna go in on both. So some get 75 for both nights. 5013 hourly, all firefighters. So that was bumped up to 2.5%. That does not include that yellow line on there. So that yellow line is our collective bargaining agreement employees, so our union employees. They've negotiated over the years a 3% increase. However, that 3% also include that increase is for COLA. There's also built-in stuff such as step raises for some periodically each year, and then we also got to change vacation and holiday pay. So that's where that bump went. And the 773 looks like a lot, but we also, remember, we wrapped both budgets, so the fire inspector is also in there as well.
Chief,
Yep.
quick
Yep.
question. When you said 3% required because of the CBA, does
Yep.
that include the 2.5, or is it 3
No, so,
plus the 2.5, meaning 5.5?
so overall,
Yep,
you get that 3% on, it's built in with that 773, it's already included in there. Plus steps for just that yellow line item. The 2.5% is everybody around that. So all the other ones around
all the
that.
other ones are,
Yeah.
okay, got
And that
it,
was
thank you.
we'll call non-contracted employees.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, not a problem. And then our admin, who was adjusted hourly from 731 to 1864. And that's to get onto the wage scale. Everybody's gonna fit nicely into the new wage scale that we have in town. And then I addressed the CBA, so.
Mike, quick question on that. So looking at your admin,
Yep,
you noted on your letter that there's an increase in hours from 12 to
Yep.
19. That's a 35% increase in pay.
yep.
That doesn't, if the hourly rate run up, that's less than, that doesn't, I'm just, it doesn't
So
make sense.
it's 19 hours a week.
Sure.
At 1864 an hour. So we came to 18,487 to work the
Okay.
19 hours. Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Where, Chief, in this, do you talk, when the police chief came in, and he talked about weekend coverage, he talked
Yep.
about covering one day and that you would
Yep.
cover the other day.
So-
Where is that represented here?
So that is in the admin. So my admin, Jeff, if you haven't met Jeff Tasker yet, I'm sure everybody will at some point.
Uh-huh.
He's about, I don't know, 8 feet tall. He does Saturdays, so I pay him, that's built into the 19 hours.
Got it,
Okay, so that's kind of where that increase came from. I
Uh-huh.
run him 12 hours right now,
okay.
a week. It's 4 hours, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, covering Saturdays. So now he's covering Saturdays right now for burn permits. I kind of had to rework a little bit to make sure I had coverage in there. And it just so happens it works out. Mark and I were splitting him for a while.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Hey, Chief?
Yep.
You talk in your letter about a fire inspector. Where's the fire inspector?
Fire inspector is included under the yellow line in the
Okay.
CBA, because he is a contracted employee, so it's
Okay.
embedded in there.
Just one person?
And that's the position we added last year, last
Okay,
night.
just one person.
Yep, just one person. Jeff Olson was promoted from firefighter, well, lieutenant firefighter EMT, working 2 24s a week, to the fire inspector. And so he works 4 days a week now, Monday through Thursday, 12
Okay.
hours.
Another question, Chief.
Yep.
You say you have 40 folks total in the department, you have 3 openings. Do the 3 openings represent here what your base, or your target salary for those 3 openings are?
Yeah, yes. So all those openings are already included in that.
They're in the budget.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, and how are you finding recruiting? Are you experiencing the same problem as the police chief?
No.
And also, let's talk about retention, because that seems to be an issue with the police chief
Recruiting and
as well.
retention is the bane of my existence in this fire department. I've been here for 27 years. I have seen so many faces come and go. Being a majority call department, we have 10 full-time, including myself, and then we have 30 call positions, okay? Call is really tough. People come in through that door, they want to be a firefighter, they want to get on those trucks, they want to do things, and they're called as they're needed. Sometimes you can go a day or 2 without a call. Or sometimes you go to work and then you're missing the calls, right? And then what happens, we get a lot of kids between 18 and 20 because they're not sure what they want to do, they want to try it out. So they come in, they do their thing here, and they find out, they either don't want to do it, or they keep going through education and they get a better job and they leave. Believe it or not, I think, a third of the Westboro Fire Department right now came through here as call firefighters at one point or another. Same with Auburn. A couple of guys have left to go to Worcester, so we do have our shares. We have struggled in the past, and, I gotta be honest with you, it's kind of nice to come up here and say, I don't need people, right? I just gotta pay them. And it's one of the first years I can remember in a very long time where we're not, like, recruiting's down. One of the big changes I made over the last 2 years is, prior to me, we didn't pay guys for training to go to the fire academy,
Okay.
guys or girls. It's just, we sponsored you, you went, we gave you the gear. When you come out, you get a little $1,000 gratuity, really. Thanks for doing it. Here's your pager, start showing up the calls. So what I started doing over the last 2 years is when I go out and I recruit and I get call firefighters, I bring them in the door right away. I said, I want you to come to every training. I want you to come to every meeting that we have. I want you to come into this building and check it out, see what it is, because I want to know that you're going to want to do that job. But I hire them right on the spot. And I give them minimum wage right now. It's $15 an hour. And we immerse them in the department and into what we do. And if it works out, they go to the academy, usually within 6 months. They spend 240 hours going to the academy, learning the practical skills and the book skills, the book knowledge. They test, they come out with Firefighter 1-2 certified. Pro board, which is good in the majority of the states across the country, so if they leave, they have a place to go. 75% of all fire departments in the country are either structured like Paxton or completely call volunteer. So it gives them a good background at least. And then sometimes, I hate losing them, but I love seeing them go someplace and I'm like, yeah, they came from Paxton. But that's okay, we get the most out of these people. You do, for your tax money, absolutely, 100%. And, as far as, retaining them, if I can get them 5 years, that's a huge win. That gives me time in those 5 years to start planning our next move. But I'll be honest with you, since I've been chief in 2021, I haven't seen more people come through this door than these last 2 years.
Mike,
Ask them to do it.
this screen that you have right
Yep.
now, can the whole sheet be shown on the slide?
Yeah, let me go back. And I might be, you might be getting a little ahead of me, because I was gonna go through everything, but go for it, Mark, what you got?
Nope, I was picking up on some of the comments here, but if you want to continue, I'll save my
Oh.
questions to the end.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yep.
All right. And then, so, yeah, so retaining, if we get 5 years, great. It's not, very few of us do it beyond 20 years, especially on the call side. It's just, family gets in the way on the call stuff, It's like, you get up in the middle of the night for calls, then you gotta get the kids on the bus the next morning, and then the day gets really long. So, it's been good, though. All right, so moving on, 5,200 purchase services. Everything's staying level funded. The only changes are in yellow. It is not an increase, it's just what was brought over from EMS to here. Now, if you look at the two separate budgets on the back of that packet, yes, the numbers themselves might be a little different, because I was able to break some things down and move them into different little line items, but it's all there, it's all accounted for. 125.9 is actually level funded with both budgets.
You talked about combining the budgets, and one of the advantages you had hoped would be,
Yep,
efficiency, economies of scale relative to efficiencies.
yep.
Can you talk about the maintenance of both vehicle and equipment, and they've gone up?
So they've
Sure.
gone, yeah, they've gone up, but that's only because we brought it over. So the vehicle maintenance and equipment maintenance, those line items were in the fire budget previously. So what we did is, some of the vehicle maintenance line items were in EMS, we just took it and moved it over for right now.
Right.
So that's why those numbers increased, but if you took both separate budgets, it's the same number. So they're level funded.
Understood.
Yep.
So in other words, the economies of scale, the efficiencies you thought you would gain are still not realized yet.
They will be, though. That's my hope, going through
Okay.
this year. Yep.
The reason I'm pursuing this line of questions is, it's a tough budget year.
Yep.
It's gonna be tougher. We wanna make cuts where they make sense, yet we
Yep.
don't want to endanger the community or put the community at risk relative to the services you provide, as well as the police chief. Saying that,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, we need to look for opportunities, and it's that, and that is where in that vein, I'm kind of pursuing this line of questions.
And, that's just one of the things, and I'll be honest with you, in the past, when we've had to make cuts, that's generally where it comes from. So what you're looking at, those
Okay.
purchase services. Things I have contracts for, I can't cut.
Right.
Right? But in tough years, before me, I know we've had tougher fiscal years in the past. Worst case scenario, you gotta put off hose testing for a
Okay.
year. You gotta put off, at least get it to the next fiscal year. So, yeah, it's a reality, and I completely understand where you're coming from in the line of questioning, and I think it's highly appropriate.
Thank you.
Yep. So just the slight changes here, 5,200, obviously merged with EMS purchases services. Vehicle maintenance increased due to budget merge, which we just discussed. The equipment maintenance increased, and this increased not because it was going up this year, but just because we brought over EMS. And the big driving factor in this, and this is where I expect to see a little bit of a difference, is we brought over our biomedical maintenance contract, came over to here, and that was like $6,300, which was budgeted for that. Believe it or not, they cannot give me a price on that until they bill me. So I'm going to tell you, I just got the bill for this year, and I budgeted last year $5,700 because we had budgeted, we had bought a new monitor with CARES money because one of our cardiac monitors, both were 10 years old, but we were able to replace at least one. And I was able to reduce that contract number by getting a new one to $5,700. So I anticipated $6,300 because that was the normal increase. They wouldn't give me the number. I had the bill at $7,800. Luckily, that bill's proactive for next year, starting in April. I've already shopped it around, and, I'm probably gonna go with a different vendor when it comes to that point, so. we may actually really see a savings there right ahead of schedule. So we added our ambulance contracts. That includes our billing company. All that stuff was already in EMS. We just added it over to 1220. Ambulance licenses, that includes our state licenses, our affiliation agreement with the hospitals, the provider recertification, so about half recertify every year. So we're on a rotating schedule there. And then the other thing that came over to this budget as well was the ambulance lease. That is not a new lease, that's existing.
And what year are you within that lease? How many years is that lease and what year?
The truck is a 2019. We paid in the rear, so this year is our third lease year on that, I believe. Third or fourth. It's a 10-year lease.
10-year lease.
Yeah, and the
Thank
truck, at the end, it's a buyout. So, well, it doesn't, we don't pony up money to buy out, but it's just ours at the end.
Okay.
Going down 5,400, this whole account moved over from EMS to fire. We didn't have a 5,400 in fire before. You can see all three items moved over. Fuel, and this is one of the issues with the budget. For years, we had budgeted fuel in EMS. Well, our diesel fuel comes out of central purchasing. This fuel is gas. The gas goes into my car, my deputy chief's car, the inspector's car, chainsaws, right? It's not EMS. It shouldn't have been there. It should have been over in fire. Medical supplies, 13,000, that came over. This is fun, because we all battle inflation lately. But we've really taken stock of our medical supplies. We switched over the last 2 years. We switched suppliers. We were dealing with Boundtree Medical. We're now dealing with Clinical One out of Quincy, and we have a scanning tool, and it helps us to maintain our par levels and what we really need and what we don't need. And so we've actually been in really good shape. Watching everybody around me complain, and I'm like, we've been really good, really tight with this stuff. Watching what we're using, we're down to calculating, and I hate to say this, it sounds kind of weird, but with inflation, we calculate how many electrodes for the cardiac monitor that we use a month. I think it's 416.66666, right? But that allows me to buy that at the best price and the amount I need versus either overstocking or understocking. And medical equipment, it gets real funky with drugs and everything because everything expires. And so sometimes we have a lot of stuff that expires before we use it. And so we are going to account for that waste. So we're always looking for ways. We have to carry mandated equipment, but we're looking for ways to always streamline that and make it the most efficient and use it appropriately. And then the last line on here, it says basic uniforms. It's what it is. It's uniforms for their collective bargaining agreement. So the union people, this is their uniform allowance. All right. Turnout gear, so this sub-account is 5,800. This is equipment, came out of fire. And it's still in fire. So again, no changes from last year. 24,000 was was what we had budgeted. We've gotten way ahead. So we used to be budgeted 34,000. I was able to reduce that last year to 24,000. This allows us. It did allow us 6 sets of gear in our annual deep cleaning that we do to all the gear. It's a deep cleaning and NFPA inspection. This now only allows us 5 sets of gear if we're lucky. That went from 3,500 to 3,800, just coat and pants. Helmet, boots, those are about 400 a piece. And then hoods and everything, so you're about 4,200 a set if you go a full set. Coat and pants, they have to be replaced every 10 years. Everybody has to have 2 sets because of cancer, because we got to wash it every time it's contaminated. So that's that. Fire suppression supplies, that's in the old budget would have been hoses, nozzles. That stays unchanged, $2,000. We were able and fortunate 2 years ago, we got a grant from the Department of Fire Services to replace all our hand lines on the trucks. So that 2,000 is when we break something or something's too old to use and we have to replace. So it's very, very fortunate we can keep it there. Radios and pagers, really just pagers. And I know it sounds kind of wacky. Some of you guys are thinking alphanumeric pagers, but it's actually radio pagers. One-way little radios that go off on your belt. Those are usually our bigger ticket item where we're gonna buy a few of those a year because either they get too old, the batteries blow up in them, guys run them over, they lose them off their belts, so, you know, that kind of stuff happens. And then radios, when we went to regional dispatch, we got all new radios per the state 911 grant. So we're in good shape with those for several years to come. All right, and then the bottom line here is this. I already went over this. So last year, you can see the breakdown of both budgets, $444,000 on fire, $759,800 on EMS for a combined total budget of $203,849. We put in $310,000 in EMS revenue, working out to about $893,849. This year, we're at $1,278,015. We're looking to increase the EMS revenue 12% to bring that up to $350,000 and offsetting it to $928,000 for a total of $34,166 or 3.8% increase over last year. And like I said, mostly, all of it in compensation. All right, questions?
Okay, Chief, you have the ambulance fund at $350,000, and at the beginning of your talk, you indicated that you're having revenue problems. The revenue is lower this year than last year.
Yep.
And is the 350 too high? I mean, because last year it was 300, I believe.
300, we projected last year 300.
Yeah.
We did do better than that throughout
Right.
the year. So we do have a bit left over that wasn't appropriated at May town meeting.
Oh, okay.
So if you look at that, there's more in there than we appropriated. 350 should be fine. The problem is I can't appropriate all of it,
Right.
because like you saw, we don't know if there's a call coming in. I'd love to have that ability to know when calls are coming in and to schedule those calls coming in. It just doesn't happen. And, quite honestly, we're seeing a big change in EMS. We have mobile integrated healthcare out there right now. It's becoming a big thing where a nurse or a paramedic will come to your house and treat you. We have a couple of patients in town right now that are under the hospital at home program. So they're an inpatient at Memorial or UMass, but they get to stay at home, and a nurse or a paramedic come out and treat them. So we're not seeing as many frequent flyers in some cases. So I'd love to tell you that, every year I'm going to project this, but I think 350 is a good start.
Okay.
Gives us a bit of a buffer in the revenue account. And then moving forward, what I'd like to do is, add 5% to that every year if we can.
So you're confident in the 350?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Is that, looking at your, that's Fund 2212, right? Under the special revenue funds. So you've
Yep.
got, that doesn't zero. You've got more in there that you keep.
Yeah, if you go on the,
Yeah, I got a copy of it
Yep.
today. It's dated
yeah,
2/1, but it says, you started the year at 505 and change.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
and then
the
the-
350 is really confident number. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not like you're saying, well, we might have 360. or we get
No,
350.
and one of our goals is to eventually, when we start replacing ambulances and cardiac monitors, is to not do it with taxpayer funds. And that was one of the goals when we started this, but obviously, challenges happen.
So speaking on the special revenue funds, I'm looking at the January 31st one. 310 came out of the account this
Last
year.
year's appropriation, yeah.
But if I went back and gave 12 months of these or 12 years of these, your beginning balance is around $500,000 and your ending balance is about $500,000
Well, not every
after you
year.
give the town 300,
This was
310. So let me ask my
Yeah.
question, Mike.
Yeah.
The question is, do you need that size balance left in that particular special revenue fund?
In order to continue funding at an increase of 5%, yes. And then if we ever hope to replace one of the ambulances with that money, yes. And I think one of the questions I had with this whole thing was, we appropriate, we kind of set before was like a dart when it came to February. This was really the first year, because we did so much in mutual aid, that number's way inflated. And so, in years past, we were at the skin of our teeth, right? We'd come in, I remember, I was being at some of these meetings with Jay Conti, the former fire chief, and like, yeah, we can do 350, and then like, by the skin of our teeth with the town accountant and the treasurer making that 350. And in a couple of years, we had to kind of lower our expectations. One of those years was last year, we lowered that expectation to 300 because we weren't sure how it was coming, because like I said, it comes in dribs and drabs. I would love to say my average monthly income or my average monthly credit is 28.5. That's where I would like to be, I think, to make that 350. I'm just doing it off the top of my head real quick. But I know in reality, I got months that I get 15,000. And I don't know month to month if we're gonna clear that. So if we can hold on to a bit of it, I know, when I was talking to Heather, to replace an ambulance, right now is about $400,000.
So did I just hear you 2 minutes ago say that maybe the replacement of an ambulance can come out of this fund?
At some point when we get enough money, yeah.
Is that in the minutes somewhere?
That's what we're hoping for.
It
Ambulance-
makes sense, I mean, if
That'd
you
be a
grow
great
that
story.
7%
Yeah.
a year, we're good.
Yeah.
10 years, it'll
That's
be
a
there,
great-
so
And that
it's-
5% is really to give back for my operations, right?
Sure.
And then I want to keep that other part, am I gonna catch the inflation on these vehicles? I can't guarantee that. That's my hope, is to maintain, a cardiac monitor it cost $37,000 2 years ago. So, that's a big nut to crack too. So that's what we're kind of hoping to do with that little bit that we can keep into like an ambulance stabilization account or something at some point. We
So
got
Mike,
to-
can we go back to the slide that shows the 8.5 by 11 on one
Yep.
screen?
Yeah.
So, so at the bottom of that, you've added the EMS from the prior year, giving a total of $1,203,000. But if you can scroll up, and you don't need to, it's shown there, under the full-time fire and EMS,
Yep.
it's only $50,000 there.
So that,
Well, let me
Yep.
finish, because 663,000,
was on EMS.
100,000 of that 1,200,000 is up in that number. So if I add the 663 to the 50, I get 713,000. In this year, you're budgeting 773,000, which is $60,000 more, which is about 8%.
Yep.
What's in that
What's the
$60,000 increase?
The driving on that 8% is the collective bargaining agreement. So the benefits they're awarded, so their COLA, the step raises that they're also guaranteed in that contract. And then on top of all that is the increase that makes to their vacation time and their holiday pay.
So the collective bargaining agreement is driving this 8%?
Is driving that 8%.
Is the 2.5% COLA part of that collective bargaining agreement?
No,
Okay.
the 2.5% COLA is the town set 2.5 COLA for non-contracted employees.
The union COLA is 3, right?
Union COLA is 3. There's also step raises that they're guaranteed that year. And then that also, those increases in that pay also drive overtime coverage. So when somebody, if the fire inspector can't cover something as far as vacation, because he's an EMT, he's not a paramedic, so they have what's called right of first refusal. So another full-time bargaining unit member can then take the open overtime shift.
So staying with this,
Yep.
Mike, at the bottom of the page, those two numbers, 1,203,000 and 1,278,000, it's about $75,000.
Yep.
We just accounted for 60,000 of it.
Yep.
And the CBA drives that.
Yep.
The next item is the administrative assistant, which I just want to make a point.
Yep.
12,000 is underpaid, 18,000 is hardly overpaid, but it's still a 50%
It's still a jump.
increase in your budget 1 year to the next.
Yep.
Don't begrudge the service that position provides.
Oh, no.
But we're not here to hand out greeting cards for the good work. We're trying to do a budget.
Yep.
It's a 50% increase in one of your positions.
Yeah, and to account for that, obviously the raise from $17.31 an hour to $18.64 an hour, plus the increased hourly load he'll do from,
Which was the weekend coverage day,
yep,
Which what?
which was the
Which is
weekend.
Saturday.
So that
Right.
position
Right.
increased
Remember
35%
the-
in
yeah.
hours.
The split between him and Dan? for
Right, I'm
weekend
not
coverage?
begrudging that. I'm just
No,
saying
no.
that's the
Yeah,
driver
yeah.
in
Yeah,
terms
that's right.
of
Yeah,
what
that's
the budget is. And the last thing, which gets us about 72,000 of the 74 is your salary at the top. And it's got CBA, I think you mentioned CBA next to it. So that's
Could-
driven by the collective bargaining
No,
agreement as well?
that's my contract with the
Yeah.
town.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't
my
think you were
contract
part
set.
of the CBA.
No.
Okay,
Not at all.
okay.
So if I can just add too, Mike did include an employee wage sheet at the back of that packet,
Yep.
just like some of the other ones had. So if anyone's curious, you can look. And I think, if I'm looking at this right, Mike, all of the yellow ones are the full-time people.
Yes, all the highlighted ones in that, and thank you for reminding me that that was in the packet, Heather.
So you can see how people progressed up. So if you're curious, hey, what's the step here, what's the increase? And you'll see Mike aligned everybody who is not a full-time person onto the wage and comp chart on the left under grade and step. And then if anyone went up a step for whatever reason, you can see it on the right-hand side in the second set of columns.
The contract's online there?
Not yet.
Or- Okay.
Someday. And then on Mike's thing too, Mark, just in case anyone looks at it, so the emergency management stipend, just like we did on the police department, the police chief with his educational incentive, trying to show people as a whole person, so all of his compensation is now one line. He's still contracted for both of those things under the same contract, but instead of pulling it from a wage line down below that covers everything else, you now see it specifically as part of the employee.
Mike, according to this, wage on the employee that Heather just brought up, then you're taking out, the fire admin assistant stipend, is that correct for 2024?
So we are, right now, we split between myself and the police department. We have, last year, we hired one specifically to do all our admin work minus payroll. So we're gonna be taking over in the next, coming months, payroll and bills
So you're taking out
in FY24. Yep.
FY24 for Eva Ryan?
Yep.
Okay.
So the ambulance issue, Mike, a year ago, do I recall correctly, you changed billing companies?
Well, we did in, I think it was FY18, we changed billing companies.
It was that far
Yeah,
back?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm a little confused in terms of the 1950, what gets billed, what gets collected, and what gets written off.
Yep.
Because I think the audited financial statements indicated that there were some bad debts.
Oh,
for
there-
the ambulance receivables?
There are a lot. The problem is, you know, we run as far as we can with collections.
Right.
The problem is medical debt, as you know, it doesn't affect people, so they don't pay it.
It doesn't affect what?
It doesn't affect their credit as much as regular debt.
Right.
So
Right.
what happens is they end up not paying it. So what ambulance services in towns typically do in these scenarios is write them off. And it's usually quicker than we have in the past. We haven't, technically in 10 years, haven't written any off. It's still all out there. One of the goals that we should be doing, and it's been highlighted by audits in the past, is writing that bad debt off after a certain time. We do have a policy that was written a couple of years ago to do this. It's just, at the time, the administration didn't believe in writing the bad debt. We were gonna work that, and we worked it. We had someone at one point just working the bad debt, trying to get it back.
So in the June 30th, 2021 audited statements, because I think the June 30th, 22 might be just now available. So in the June 30th, 2021, there was about $267,000 of bad debts, if I'm not mistaken. Do you have any idea what the last fiscal year was? Is it getting better?
Not off the top of my head, but probably not. The last few years, I would tell you, as far as collections, we collect, I think what we collect, and don't hold me to this number, I'd have to call a billing company. We collect about 90% of what we bill after adjustments. It's the deductibles, the co-pays, that kind of stuff that we have a hard time getting from people. And then it just piles up. And then, yes, we do run the gamut. Like with the college, we get a lot of out-of-state health insurances that don't pay in Massachusetts. Just won't. I think Florida, the equivalent of Medicaid or Mass Health down in Florida, does not pay.
So I don't want my question to
Yep.
be misread. It's a
Nope.
valuable service,
Oh, no, absolutely.
but mutual aid requires us to respond,
To bill, yep.
and yet we have to absorb the bad debt on responding to it if we don't collect it. It's almost like an unfunded mandate.
EMS, the world of EMS, there are a lot of unfunded mandates, so, and that, part of being one of it, it's one of those, the way it's drawn up is that everybody, if you call 911, and you're having a medical emergency, there should be an ambulance at your door, no matter what.
Yeah.
And back, in the 80s, they came out with the EMTALA laws. I can't say I can't take you because you don't have insurance or you have bad insurance. By law, I have to take you. The bonus to doing this is that we get something. The CPE program that we've worked the last 3 years has been huge in getting some of that back, not a ton, but it keeps us going. In a perfect world, I'd love to be collecting 100% of what we bill. We'd have no issues. You'd be looking, you probably, with a lot of our revenue issues would probably be gone away. It's just one of those things with EMS in general, and every service does it. Even the privates have to battle this worse than we do because, that's what they're basing their entire livelihood on is patient billing. So that's why the ambulances have to do these private transfers and everything else. So we are, doing our best to collect it. It's, just taking it to the ends of the earth sometimes.
Are there any other questions for the chief?
None?
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks,
That was
Chief, thank you very much.
excellent
Thank you
presentation.
for, just gonna offer it up. I'm gonna be in my office for a little bit after the meeting. If anybody wants to come over, take a tour, anything like that, see the stuff that you pay for, it's here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to discuss the assessor's budget with Assessor Ms. Clute.
Hope the PowerPoint presentation is as good.
There were fire trucks that would turn and move. That was graphic. That was.
You like that?
I really did. I'm easily amused. That was fantastic.
There, you're going the wrong way.
Thank you for coming in this evening.
So, I was told the board, FinCom had questions about my budget, so I'm here to answer them.
If you could just go through the purchase services indicating the
Okay,
application of the services, such
Okay.
as meetings and training and so on and so forth.
okay.
You
so-
describe them, that's all.
Okay, so the training is courses that those that are in my position have to take in order to attain a certification. At one course a year, it would probably take me about 10 years to get that certification. So after discussions with Heather, and, last year I was able to take one course, was not even able to go to the summer conference because I didn't have it in my budget. So we determined, how many more courses I need to take. I've met the number of hours, in the position. It's just getting these courses under my belt so we can, finish up my certification. So, and I probably have about 6 or 7 more courses to take.
So you're predicting certification when? Two
If I
years or
can
so?
take 2 per year, starting fiscal '24, 24, 25, 26, sometime in '27,
Okay.
I would say, yeah, sometime in fiscal '27.
Okay, the meetings that you attend?
That's the training. And that was 300 because the former assessor already had her certification.
Right.
So she did not have to worry about this at all. There are little half-day trainings and, one-day trainings that are somewhere in, in the terms of, between $70 and $80. I think that's what she was using in here. Meetings, there are meetings that we attend and they count towards educational credits, which you have to have those educational credits, and those get added into what you need to attain your certification. The deeds and plans, they were split out. We combined them into one line item, $60 instead of being split out. Dues, the dues is to the Worcester County Assessors Association and the the MAAO, so Mass Assessors Association. The geographic services, I guess it's what, the building department or planning? Who pays into that? Something out of planning or building pays into that a little bit, CMRPC. They pay into it, and then we had it at 2,000 in here for my maps, but with what another department pays in and then we earn credits, I was able to reduce mine,
Okay.
to update my maps every year.
So that's just a share of the cost that you share with,
I don't really understand it completely.
I think it's, CMRPC is our regional planning agency,
Yep.
so I think what it is the cost for X number of hours for them to assist us
Right.
with different services. So as far as Kateri goes, that would be pertaining to our maps, so GIS services specific.
Yep.
So it would give us a certain number of hours to help us with that
Right,
project.
and they update my maps as I need.
so the reduction from 2,000 to 852 is just, the 2,000 was what was just the whole town, and now the 852 is just what the assessors are using,
I
probably?
don't understand their logic with it, so,
I think it's been what we've been budgeting,
Oh.
so when we've looked through all of these lines, right, we've gone very deep into the mud
Okay.
to figure out what we're actually utilizing, what we're spending, and making sure we're not just throwing the number that was there in years past and actually getting more to the,
So the 852 may
actuals.
be more of a reflection of what you actually spent in FY22 than Okay.
Yeah, the 2,000's been budgeted for 5 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Heather did a dumpster dive and realized you're
Okay.
not spending that much. so.
Cool. Thank you.
And then the annual conference, it's typically around $400 to $500, plus Heather, add in, 2 nights at a hotel, because it's usually down the Cape. Last year it was in Plymouth, and like I said, last year I didn't go, I didn't have the money in my budget. However, after discussions, it is important to go because there are a lot of educational seminars over 2 to 3 days that I've been missing out on, so. And then the MLS, which is the real estate listings, that, we just broke it out. It's always been in here, but it was kind of a combined, kind of looped in with some other numbers.
So Kateri, that
Yeah.
number is a super small number.
It is.
But,
it's
but the
300.
legend says currently paid out of funds.
Currently
What does
paid
that
out,
mean?
so if you look at last year where it was 3460, it was, we had a whole host of things here. And it was paid out of, training and meetings and so forth. It was just,
And what is it,
I didn't
what is it
understand it either.
used for? What is the
it's used for
MLS?
MLS service, for the multiple listing service, to see what houses are on the market, what houses sold for, how long they were on the market for. It gives a lot of detail. It's what the realtors put up there. But
Right,
it
I
is a-
understand,
it
but
is a-
how do you, the assessors department, use it?
Oh, I mean, there's detail information in there. And the other thing is, we need to see what it sold for, what it was listed for, how many days it was on the market.
It aids in efficiency,
Yeah.
Steve. So it makes it so that some towns, what they might do is they might get a copy of all the local newspapers to make sure they're watching any real estate transactions. So this allows Kateri to know when there's a real estate transaction happening in Paxton. It also gives her an insight, right? Let's say there's a house that she hasn't been into in a number of years, and every picture of every single room happens to appear, and she notices, improvements and higher quality fixtures
I-
than what she has listed.
I happened to look at the listing yesterday while I was at home working, and there was a house that has an extra kitchen in it that we didn't have.
Okay, so
Listed.
that leads me to a line of questioning that I wanted to go down anyway.
Okay?
Building permits, right? Can you kind of walk us through, what is the process for the building permit?
That would be the building department,
Okay.
not me.
At what point does the assessor engage in that process, if at all?
I get notice that a permit's been filed, so I make a note of it,
Okay,
and then at the end of the fiscal year, so 6/30,
yep,
any home that has had increases in, work done, like remodel their whole kitchen,
right,
add in a pool, an
Yep.
in-ground pool,
yep,
any sort of major construction, add an addition. I then look at that, I have access to that program, and between Cheryl and I, we, create reports. So I can see what building permits were completed by that date, June 30th. And then I get out there to those homes and request inspections, or if they're not home, I walk around to see if they've put a pool in, I'll measure it, I'll measure any new fencing, any new, concrete, patios they put in, and that gets added in to the property record, and then that then increases the value, it adds growth.
okay, and a growth in revenue,
Excuse me?
and a growth in revenue.
You got
The
it.
net result is growth in revenue.
Yes.
Okay. At any point, there are a number of building permits filed per year, and I would assume you cannot get out to every one of the building permits.
I get out to almost all of them. Last year, I got out to almost every single one of them I have to submit reports to Division of Local Services. I have deadlines to do that. I have deadlines to, so I have to get everything done prior to those deadlines and get those submitted to them.
Okay. At any
So-
point, do you use the MLS service to assess an increased value?
No, we can't,
Okay, all right.
no.
You also, under salary, under 5102, you talk about administrative assistant. You have a reference to E6, E7, yet I have no context on your budget
So-
what
so-
E6 or E7
so-
is.
I was unaware of this, but I guess last year, it was, calculated lower than what it should have been, based on, what, my E6 or E7. Once everything was redone, you know, they looked at the salary schedules per the Collins report, was it, Heather?
So that was done a couple of years ago, Kateri. So this year with the select board, we went through everything and made sure that everyone was on the chart. We also looked to make sure everyone who was already on the chart was actually aligning with a particular grade and step. So, Steve, I can send this along. I don't think we included it in Kateri's, but we also have the employee wages sheet for her, just like we have for everyone else with departments with employees. So it just shows the E6 last year was, this year 3209, because that's what she was actually making, or the closest to it, and then E7 is 3289.
So E6 and E7 speak to salary.
It's just a
grade
step
or
increase.
a salary band,
Yep.
not a specific footnote that I'm supposed to be looking for to.
No.
We, that's the sheet you
Hence
gave
the
us about a month
confusion.
ago.
Yeah, it's the
There was a
original
sheet.
wage
Remember
and
we
comp
saw the
sheet.
sheet that had all the different letters and
Yeah,
classifications?
yeah.
That's
I
what
get it.
that's for.
I get it, Jeremy, I get it. But that was not innately apparent to me when I'm looking at this.
Understood.
All
Fair.
right. Also, I note certification under 5,700
Yeah,
is
so
up,
certification
and again,
is
it's the
every
anticipation.
so many years, we
Yep.
have to certify all our values with the
Okay,
Department of Revenue.
got it.
So that is a very extensive process. Actually, I wasn't even in the position 4 months, 3 months, and I found out that had to be done for
Okay.
fiscal '22. So
I
it was
got it.
somewhat baptism by fire, and it's so extensive. And our vision appraisal company who does our software, I worked with them extensively. We had to look at all commercial properties. We've got to, that was just everything. So we had to have all the values in the town certified.
Okay, understood. That being said, it references, in your comments associated with that footnote, anticipated increase up for a new contract. When
Yes,
is the new
so every 3
contract?
years, I do not have the contract yet.
Okay,
It's up at the end of June.
okay,
I've already contacted Vision Appraisal, and they said they were working on things, so I have no indication when they're gonna get it to me. So, it's just a waiting game right now.
understood. So the likelihood of getting it before May
Is slim,
is slim to none.
I'd say slim.
All right. All right, slim.
I've talked to two
Yeah.
individuals there.
Okay.
And put a request in
Fine.
for it,
Yep,
and they indicated they don't really send them out until sometime in June.
all right. That being said, how confident are you of the 19,467 as a projected?
I'm confident, yeah.
Number.
I'm pretty confident.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one concerning the ESRI ArcView software. It went from 800 down to 0, and the suggestion was that it was transferred to the MIS budget.
That's
then-
always been in the MIS budget. I've never seen it in my budget.
You've never seen it in your budget.
No.
It was in last year's budget.
$800?
Yeah. Because that raises the question that I had, was that it was in the MIS budget last year. So it
So
was
when I get
essentially in
those-
both budgets.
So from, I don't see it in my budget last year. I'm looking at it.
Okay, I'll have to look again.
So I guess, this goes back to the earlier comment, right?
It's
So
never
we've
been
gone
in my
through
budget.
every single budget with a fine tooth comb to make sure we have what should be there, to make sure that we're not just putting stuff that we've always had. to make sure that the numbers are accurate. So if it was in two places and now it's only in one, that's fantastic, because now it's in the one we're using it from, and Kateri's
Okay.
reference was that's where she
So the
believes it was
800
last year.
belongs in the
Since,
EMS
since I've,
office?
since I've been on board here, and I was hired September of 2020, that has never been in it's never been in my budget.
Okay.
The first time I received an estimate for it, I went and asked Donna about it, and she said, oh, that comes over here. When you get the invoice, just give it to me. So it was never listed in my budget.
Okay, I'll look that up.
Now, I do have, so under my purchase services,
Can we go back to that? I can save everybody looking at it. I have last year's budget, and it's not in it.
It is not in it.
No.
yeah,
Okay.
it's not in my assessor's budget, yeah. And it wasn't in there for FY22 either, so. Now, under my purchase services, the total is 4260, because there is a $500 line item that we originally took out after my discussion with Heather, but then I realized it needs to be in there because it's for expert services, to have appraisals done, or to have an appraiser, represent the town in an appellate tax board hearing. So that had to be, that 500, instead of it stating data processing, it was added back in. I changed the, and I think I sent you that revised, Rich.
Right.
So instead of it being data processing, it's appraisal services. So,
Any other questions?
Yeah, can we talk about new growth? Because new growth comes out of her office.
Yep, she just indicated to me
I
about
s-
1 hour ago.
well,
that
no,
you're-
but I sent you that email on the 31st of January, and I just resent it today because technically it was due today.
Yep.
I just wanted to reiterate and confirm that what the board and I discussed, which was 75,000.
Yep.
That's the new growth number, the estimated new growth number that we are providing this year. I did explain why. There's not been as many building permits pulled over the past 5 to 6 months. And if they are, they're for minor things, like a new front door, a roof. There's no growth in that. We can't pull growth out of a new roof. We can pull growth out of a complete rehab of your exterior, new roof, new siding, new windows. That will add some growth, but not a lot. But just a new roof doesn't add growth, and that's a lot of the building permits we're getting, that are being pulled, 3 windows, 4 windows, a new front door, no structural changes. So we feel that 75 is a good estimate. I looked at new homes. So far, I have 2, full new homes at 100%. And then there's about 4 of them that had partial percentages completion for fiscal '23. And for fiscal '24, we're gonna see 2 of them at, go from 60% to 100%, so that's 40% right there. One's going from 75 to 100%, that's 25% right there. And then there is a new one going up right next door to my house. And I don't think they're gonna be complete by June 30, but I'm gonna capture what is complete, whatever percentage it is. So we don't have a lot of new builds right now. So most of the growth is gonna have to come out of what's been filed with building permits and getting out there and doing, cyclical inspections.
So can I make my annual appeal? In that, unfortunately, I have some numbers in front of you and you don't have the same sheets, but for those of us that have our workbook, on page 3, it lists the new growth, 75, the number that you just shared with us, is in our budget.
Okay.
a year ago, the actual was 96,000. So let me just make my point. So 96,000 actual a year ago, we budgeted 65.
No,
This doesn't,
we budgeted 80.
this doesn't matter, but I was advocating for 90, but I think we ended up on 65, which is what my notes reflect, but
I don't think we
nevertheless,
were
let me just
65
finish
last
it there. But it ended up on 96. So historically, it's always been above what we budgeted. That's point one. Point two is, in prior years, which preceded a number of people on the finance committee, that 75,000 number was 149, 148,
How many
154,
years back was
120.
that?
So the trend away from growth is dissipating quickly, and I think as a town, we gotta get our arms around, why is that happening? Because right now, we're budgeting half of what we realized only 5 or 6 years ago. So it's a rhetorical question, but why is that happening? Why is there no new growth? Because that's a key component
I
of the
understand.
revenue side of our trying to balance our particular budget. It's not going to be resolved tonight, but at least putting the question out there, I think, is worthy with the assessor here this evening to raise that we're trending in the wrong direction.
Well, last year it was not 65. I will double check it and send it to Rich, but it was not 65.
So,
I don't
in
have my-
the spirit of having last year's budget, 65,000 was budgeted. So,
I'd have to double check.
96.
I got 96, because
Right.
we had a lot of new homes.
Yeah.
We don't have as many new builds going up in town. And in years past, we had a lot of new builds as well.
I don't want you to feel
So-
defensive. The
No, I'm
question
not.
is,
I'm not.
why? Why did we have those new homes then and we don't have the new homes
Well,
now?
it's costing more to build.
It's costing more to buy.
It's costing a lot more to build. It's
Land has
costing a
gone
lot.
up in Paxton tremendously.
Yes.
Right.
Prices
But
of
I mean,
land
it's a
have
key
gone up.
component of our budget, and we'd love it to go this way.
Yep.
And at the same time, it's going that way, which causes us to have to cut other budgets in order to balance it.
understand.
That's the point.
So, I can only speak to the past couple of years when I've been in this role. So, and last year, we did have some new builds, and I made sure I got out there and measured them and captured everything that I could, to get that out of there. I mean, if you want to reach that, 90,000 plus, and you got to remember, it's also tied to the tax rate, Mark. So if we have, $4 million in growth, or $4 million in assessed value increases, then we need to see what, that's tied to the tax rate. So this year, it's going to be tied to the tax rate of 17.58 per thousand. So what do we have to see, what's the number we need to see a new growth to hit 80 or 90 or even 100,000? It's a big number. And they're just, I just told you, I've got 2 homes at 100% that we can capture all that as growth at 100%. And I've got 4 more that 2 are gonna be 40% to bring them to 100, because I got 60% last year. And 1's gonna be at 25. And the other one's gonna be, the one that's under construction now, right next to me, I'm gonna, it's up, it's not complete, but I'm gonna capture a certain percentage of it as of 6:30. I don't know what that's gonna be yet. It all depends on inspections. So I work with Cheryl and find out where they are on inspections. So There's not a lot of new homes going up in town. Especially when you have like a less than an acre property on one of our roads that's selling for $225,000.
I think it's a good topic, but we're not going to solve why we're not building more houses in Paxton.
Yeah,
No, I
But
don't think
I
so.
just for the sake of time, we have Kathy and other people.
yeah.
If we can moderate or kind of stick to the, you know. to the-
Okay, are there any other questions for Kateri? Thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome.
Much appreciated.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is Cheryl Lombardi, the Town Service Coordinator. It's a budget 1129.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, mine's not so much fancy as Chief Pinzachory's. Is there, do you want me to start with compensation
Let's
at the top?
start at the top, and move on down.
Okay. So we calculated, the compensation this year, it's actually just a little over, even though it's going up a step. We calculated, I do 24 hours of office time, and then we figured 3 hours a week for a meeting. I don't meet every week, but sometimes I have 2 meetings, but on an average, we just put in 3 hours. So 27, 2.5.
2.5.
Oh, sorry. 2.5. So the 24 plus the 2.5 a week, and that's how we calculated that number. Purchase services, we cut that down a lot. I can't remember how long ago, maybe 4 or 5, 6 years ago, we incorporated the planning board and the Board of Appeals budgets, their separate budgets, into my office purchase services and supplies. And again, looking at what we actually spent over the past few years, it was not a lot. So we basically just cut that down to what we just really need. And it's under advertising, but advertising meaning like for public hearings, people have to, with the T&G, have to put on advertising, the ads for that, so. And generally, they pay for those themselves, but every once in a while, the board has to, like, for instance, if we do a zoning bylaw change, they have to pay for that, so, that kind of thing. And then for office expense, the same type of thing. I really don't buy a lot of supplies. Typical stuff like envelopes, typical office supplies, but like ink for the printer is probably the biggest cost I ever have, but I haven't even bought any this year, so. So we really don't need a lot for that. So we cut a good amount out of like the minutia of it all, so saved a little money. Any questions? Like I said, it's very simple.
Your budget's pretty easy.
Yeah.
One thing
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
excuse me, the, concerning the, let's see, where is it? The wages, I'm a little confused here because the requested is 38,539 and the recommended is 37,972. I don't understand why they're different from each other.
I can answer that one for you, Cheryl. Sure. So what I did here is the requested is what Cheryl had initially asked for, and then the recommended is what her and I came up with. So the original number included, I think we were budgeting originally like 26 or 27 hours a week. And that's when we sat down and said, okay, well, what do you actually work? So that's where we figured out, she works 24 hours in the office. And then when she has meetings, she attends those. And there's not a meeting every single week. It could be, this week and that, then off a week or off 2 weeks. And sometimes the meeting could be 30 minutes and, every rare now and then it could be 3 hours. But by budgeting her 2.5 hours for the meeting time, it actually gives her extra flexibility so that if she has to work more hours or if there's something big that comes up, she has the money in the budget. But we didn't need to budget everything. Right? We only needed to budget enough to make sure we covered her. So even with the step increase, it's still enough. So the reason that initial number was higher, Rich, it's just that was the original calculation. Like everything else, we just, traditionally, she would take the prior number and go up the 2.5%. But when we go down to the, the nuts and bolts, we don't need that much.
It looks like it's almost exactly the difference between 27 and 26 and a half hours, times the hourly rate over 52 weeks. So that would make sense.
Okay.
Correct.
Joe, could you go back over, I must have missed this, advertising, legal ads? The budget that originally was given to us was that went down to $300 based upon the town administrator's recommendation. Yet it's back up to $1,242.
Right.
Why is that?
It should still be that
No.
$300.
Gotta go to the next
Gotta go to the
column.
rec line.
Is
Gotta
it
go one more column over, Steve.
300 or 700?
All
It's
right.
300 for the advertising, then it's 200 for planning board training and 200
Okay,
for
again,
ZBA.
though,
Oh,
I go
correct,
to,
yes.
there still is a difference. I am trying to resolve this with this.
Right.
And I have no I'm struggling to resolve,
Yeah.
okay? Even at fiscal year '24 R, which is in the sheet I have, or was given to me, or shared with me, was 37,972. Yet here it's 38,922. So, is this the correct number?
The one of them is the one that was submitted to me. The other one is that after Heather worked it over.
Right.
So I think,
So like the other things that come to us 10 minutes before the meeting, this is
That's,
a
yes,
revised.
this. yeah,
so I
looks
think
like-
these numbers should be pretty much on par, Steve, because Cheryl and I went through this before she submitted it to you and our numbers matched. But I think what might have happened is last time we looked through some of these, Rich, I think you had mentioned that some of the columns, she didn't carry the numbers over on the original sheet that happened.
What I'm gonna have to do is to redo this form and send it back out to everybody, where we're not gonna be able to vote on it tonight.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Cheryl?
None.
I thank you for coming in.
Okay.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Okay, the highlight of this evening is going to be the Recreation Revolving Fund. Thank you, Kathy, for coming in.
You're welcome. And Jeff. You have to thank Jeff.
And him too.
Jeff is back.
Evening.
Good evening.
Got to wrap up that thing. Believe everyone received copies of the budget that Kathy drafted up.
Yep.
What would you like to know?
The individuals who wish to discuss the,
Yeah, do you know the background behind asking for that information and asking for you to be here this evening is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, there were requests to increase what had been voted on at town meeting, that the expenditure would be 120, and a request that can come to the finance committee that does not have to go to town meeting was to increase it by 200,000. And then shortly, that was for the prior year, then shortly thereafter, another request to increase what had been voted on at town meeting from 120 to 200. And the question was, in a nicer way than this sounds, what's going on that's causing that? Because when we look at the special revenue fund, we see a beginning balance, revenue and expenses, and an ending balance. And there's a lot of activity going on there. And then we look at the rec budget, and it only has your salary. And all of us were smart enough to know there's way more going on in the recreation department than, no disrespect, than just your salary. So can we get some detail of all of those particular programs that are going in and out? And I would submit that you gave us a perfectly good summary with the detail supporting each of those programs. And our point was basically certified, that there are 25 programs that go through that one particular revolving fund. And the question I would say is, who knew? You guys know, but what's published on the website every month and what the Finance Committee was boring down on, we didn't know. And we said, can we get a summary of the activity of all the programs that are going through? And here it is. And I was probably not alone, but on the front side of, can we get that information? And I'm here on the back side saying, you gave us what we asked for. I would footnote that a lot of the programs are losing money, but, it was invoked the other day that we're not in there for making profit, we're in there to provide a service. But there seems to be two that are carrying the day. The before and after school program is very profitable, and per your schedule here, the summer program is not. At least the way I read this, where the expenses were $10,000 more than the revenue. That's not our job to operate and run the recreation department. Our job as the Finance Committee was, if we don't see it in a budget, but we know what's happening, is there some other vehicle that we can get that information from? And here it is.
Well, I would suggest, because it hasn't happened in prior years, I don't mind having, because that's an ongoing living document, right?
Right.
So I wouldn't mind providing that as some type of addendum to our budget every year.
That'd be a great idea. That would be a great idea. Now having submitted it, if I can continue, I do have a couple of questions. On the top of it, it says check register. And part of my being an accountant for a minute, but I know what a check register means, but what does it mean that it's on your schedule?
It was the template I stole from Excel.
Okay.
So if you appreciate the document, you want to go in and use it, Mark.
I'll forget the headers.
Just Google
Yeah,
check
okay.
register
Yeah,
Excel.
Okay. I rest my case.
Any other questions or commentary?
No, again, thank you for providing it. I think it was just, we just needed to, we just had a question, and this answered the question perfectly.
We're all fans of transparency.
I understand that, but again, part of me says, why did it take us 8 months to get this document? We asked for this when we had the initial fund increase in July, and it would have we kept bringing it up, and we kept seeming like pains in the behind, and we didn't want to. It was just, again, this would have solved it all if we had just known, because a significant increase going from 120 to 200, and then, twice in a period of 4 or 5 months.
Sure.
The clarity was just, this is all I needed to see, and I think Mark spoke for the same, so.
Fair enough.
The only addition I would add or suggest is that in a couple of these, there are payroll that are run through. And we obviously want to have some level of confidentiality, but the name of the person to whom the payroll is paid is listed. In a couple of the other programs, it's just a lump sum payroll, and I think if we're going to go the transparency route, it might be a good idea to detail that a little bit. That would be my only request. Other than that, we got what we asked for.
Mark, if I had to guess, I'm guessing when you see someone's name, is that payroll or is that like a vendor?
No, under the before and after school program, I think I missed their name.
Yeah, you
did.
Under the summer program, I did it because there's a lot more.
That's exactly
Okay.
right, right.
Which
And
is-
it's just easier just to
Gotcha.
lump sum.
Right.
Kathy, would you have another copy of that so that I can have one?
I don't have a
You
hard
don't?
one,
Okay.
no.
Well, I just printed out
I
what,
printed out the first page, just the.
Okay.
when I-
normally I'd say this off camera, but this is printed out from what you sent us.
I didn't send that to you.
Yes, I sent it to you, you sent it to them. Well, I sent it to you, I'm assuming that's how they got it.
Oh, boy, I'm losing it.
You sent it out, last week?
I'll have to check it, but.
That's, well done. Leave it at that.
Oh, well.
We good?
I think we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Friday, February 17th.
The 17th, you said?
Yes.
Okay, I gotta look that one up.
Do you want me to send it back to you? Do you want me to send it back to you?
I don't even know
Stand
what-
firm, Rich, we're not turning on you.
I don't know. Okay, next thing on the agenda is to vote on the following budgets. They're small, and we haven't covered them yet. One of them is the Historic District budget, which is $1183. $200. Is there a motion to support $200
So moved.
for the Historic District Commission? Second?
Second.
Any discussion of this one? You want them in for a discussion?
Rich,
Yes.
can I ask a question? So I've looked past, in the past years, it doesn't look like there's anything that's been expended out of this line. So the Historic District Commission, this is the local historic district,
Right.
right? So this is what we have a bylaw for, this
Yep.
is their overview of the town's projects, because we're the only members, or only buildings and facilities in the historic district.
Yes.
So what does that money cover?
Stationary
Well,
photo
they-
processing and postage fees.
But they would do all that through the town's equipment, and they shouldn't be spending postage to mail us a letter, because it's only pertains to our building, so I'm not sure what we're funding.
It's a small enough amount of money to potentially have it available for them to use should they need it.
But I guess my question is, so we go through every single line of everyone's budget, we ask questions about, $50 domains and so forth. So my question is, if we're looking at every single dime and penny, what are we doing with the 150? Because I don't think they've used anything in the past. They have complete access to the
Right.
town's resources, our postage machine, our copy machine, and again, if they need to mail anything, they should be hand delivering it, because it would be to the town anyway. So I'm not sure what we're funding.
So would somebody like to have them in to discuss the $150?
Well, maybe an alternative is not to vote on it, but to have the town administrator come back to us as to what the budget should be.
Yeah, they don't need to come in, but right, at least just.
Well, she says it should be zeroed out.
Right.
Let me ask a different question. Did someone actually submit to you,
They submit this every year.
so they sent you this budget?
They send me budgets, yeah.
Okay. This was not, you just assumed year over year
No.
it was gonna stay the same?
No.
Okay. And who was the person, do you remember who the person was that submitted it?
Donna McLean. Donna McLean is the chair of the Historic District Commission.
So can we ask them to zero it out? Is that how it works? I don't know.
Okay.
How does that work?
Tell you what, I'll contact her tomorrow, and I'll send out a question, an answer to everybody.
Thanks.
Hi, I didn't see you there. Okay, so we'll hold that one off. Historical Commission, $450. Is there a motion for $450 for the Historical Commission? Second?
Second.
Any discussion on this one? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next one, the Worcester County Retirement Assessment, which is $787.40.
787,000.
$787,000, Jesus. $787,040.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
So there is a handout for this.
Yes.
And everyone's saying it's just one side, one sheet of paper, it's double-sided. So
Yep.
it just breaks down the Worcester County retirement in detail. So you see the Paxton share 22 through 24. That is the town's obligation, Light Department, Water Department, Anna Maria College get broken out from those as well. And the back side of that sheet, you'll see is the form as we get from Worcester Regional retirement system, just their breakdown of those pieces. You'll notice that I don't have good explanations for it, but some of the numbers went up higher than other numbers, and one of them actually went down. I'll circle back with Donna Kuchar tomorrow and see if we can reach out to Worcester and see if they can tell us anything. But you'll notice it looks like the assessment for Anna Maria College went down significantly. And our amount went up by about 12%, and the water department went up by about 133%.
Do you have any idea why the water department increased that much?
No, so all I can tell you when I had, what's that?
For the additional employee because.
Yeah.
It could go from 1 to 2 employees and.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's only, you're talking $7,500, but it's 133% because it was only,
Yeah.
Right.
it was
So
low before.
when I talked to Donna Kuchar, as my understanding is that they take a snapshot in time, and then they plug that in and they utilize it, but the snapshot's always after it already happened, right? So you're kind of making up for the difference as the years go on and as increases and employees or new people come on and so forth.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Any more discussion on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the next one is central purchasing.
So this one, again, is in front of you, it's
Yeah.
broken down. It's the same exact thing as what Donna had sent with the numbers. It breaks down all of the pieces, what constitutes it, so heating oil, we actually used FY22 annual quantities, because that was more, I think, a typical winter year thus far when we got to this budgeting process. And we used current numbers, just so that they added out, so something was somewhat realistic, hoping again that the prices drop in the future. But you'll see some of the amounts went down, most of the amounts went up on those calculations. Postage, we've based it on what we're using, where we're trending, what we're looking at for those. Telephones went down slightly based on actuals. Electricity, we used the numbers we had, 2.5% increase from the light company. And then diesel numbers, we used, again, the amount totals for FY22 with the current rates for right now to try to get us to the most accurate number prediction we're gonna be at.
Okay, once again, the numbers are different than the ones that I have in the spreadsheet, because I got this recently. So is there a motion for central purchasing, $185,800?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's go back to Chief Pingatori's budget. The fire department. Now, you could pretty much guess that he was happy with the two budgets put together the way he did. And so I presume that's the one that we'll be voting on tonight. The budget is $1,278,015. Is there a motion? No motion?
Given that we've just seen it and had the presentation this evening, I'd like some time to digest that.
Okay, so we will put that off until later. And how about 1141, the assessor's budget?
So moved.
We need to read the amount into the minutes.
1141, that's $82,976. And there's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. So, that's it with the budgets that we can consider tonight. Now, the next thing on the agenda is to appoint a Finance Committee member to the Economic Development Committee. There's an individual who wishes to be on it.
I had expressed my interest to be on it back when we had first talked about it. Steve and I were, both interested, and I would still be interested.
Okay, is there a motion to have Steve be our
So-
representative?
So moved.
I'm
Second.
sorry?
Jeremy.
Not you.
Jeremy.
Jeremy,
Thanks, Mike.
I'm thinking about next
I
week.
guess so.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Jeremy, are you available on Mondays or Thursdays?
Yes, man.
Okay, that's good, because if you said no, I was gonna say try again.
As long as we keep it to you 6 or 7 p.m., we should
Okay.
be good. I can't do daytime meetings.
I just finished a survey of every member and tried to hone down 2 different days and 2 different times of availability. So if you said no, I was gonna cry.
No, Mondays and Thursdays are pretty good for me.
Okay, that's all the business on the agenda. Any other discussion of any sort? Hearing none? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.